Hey guys, welcome to the Massive Iron Channel. I'm Steve Shaw. In this video, we're continuing the Learning from the Legend series, and today we are going to look at the classic Hercules, Steve Reeves. Before I get into this topic, if you guys need coaching, check out the link down below. Coaching is what I do for a living. I would love to help. All right. So Steve Reeves, Hercules, we're going to dive in. I did a video like this for Serge Nubret, and we're going to dive into the training and nutrition of the natural bodybuilding standard, the aesthetic standard, Mr. Aesthetics, Steve Reeves. Now, Steve Reeves is a golden era icon. Everybody in bodybuilding that's serious about bodybuilding knows who he is. He is celebrated for his exceptional proportions and aesthetics. He is often regarded as the gold standard for the classic natural bodybuilding look or the classic bodybuilding physique. He basically set the benchmark for timeless symmetry and natural muscularity. Despite his legendary status, though, there's a lot of misinformation about how Steve trained. So let's take a look. Before we do so, I want to dive into his eating philosophy. It was very straightforward, focused on health and balanced nutrition. For muscle building nutrition, Steve emphasized two core philosophies. Number one, natural foods, and number two, moderation. And both of these were framed with a focus on overall health. Steve typically ate 3 balanced meals a day and tried to avoid snacking in between. He believed that digestion should run in cycles and that constant eating disrupted this natural rhythm. Steve also avoided eating late at night or just before training, and he also believed that supplementation was not necessary if you had your nutrition nailed down. Now, surprisingly, Steve wasn't a high-protein eater like you would see in the modern bodybuilding landscape. His macronutrient split was roughly 60% carbohydrates, 20% protein, and 20% fat. Now, based on how many calories he likely ate per day, this would probably still be a very reasonable amount of protein. He just didn't overdo the protein, if that makes sense. His diet included things like steak and eggs, cottage cheese, salad with olive oil, brown rice and veggies, fresh fruit, and whole grain toast. All right, so let's look at training. How did Steve Reeves train? There's a lot of conflicting and confusing information about how he trained, just floating around the fitness internet. Some claim his routines were focused more on volume and chasing the pump than on progression. So this is a point I want to address first. Steve Reeves was undeniably strong, and some reports suggested he could dumbbell bench 140s for reps and front squat 370 pounds for 10 reps. So let's take a closer look. All of these claims are referenced as best that I could. Was Steve Reeves strong? Dumbbell bench, he was using 140s. Generally, what I read was that his training dumbbell bench was more around the 120s, but he could do 140s. This was referenced in his book, Building the Classic Physique, The Natural Way, and I believe it was also referenced by John Little. The second lift, front squats 370 by 10, was referenced by John Little, who is a lifting historian. And there is some chatter about Steve doing military presses with 220 pounds. This was listed in one of Steve Reeves' routines and also echoed by the legend Reg Park. It's not unusual to see claims that Steve Reeves trained for the pump and used volume, but didn't train for progression. But it goes without saying that he had very potent strength levels, and whether directly or indirectly, Steve Reeves experienced an incredible amount of progressive overload over the years. Basically, you could say his bench was as strong as mine, which is pretty darn impressive. Now let's look at his training focus. Steve typically used conventional rep ranges, usually in the 8 to 12 reps per set. This is very in line with the massive iron philosophy. He emphasized controlling movements, focused on strict form and strong muscular contraction through each rep. So basically, Steve was doing the same thing I teach in my book, Massive Iron, trying to maximize every rep, trying to maximize every set, focusing on control, focusing on hard training, and letting progressive overload be the fruit from that focus. A couple of quotes here. I prefer to use moderate weights that allowed me to maintain perfect form and control through each rep. This can be misinterpreted by many as Steve was not using a challenging weight or heavy weight, which isn't true at all based on the previous strength standards or strength levels that we just showed Steve was at. We have to be very careful when processing information from these classic lifters because it can often be skewed to try to push someone's specific dogma. This is very much the way I train, not sloppy, not just throwing weight around, trying to progress using what you would call a moderate weight. And in this context, moderate weight pretty much means working within the 8 to 12 rep range with a very challenging weight relative to that rep range. Steve said it's not how much you lift, but how you lift it, which is very much true. And I trained hard, but I always trained smart. I never believed in reckless lifting or ego-driven numbers. So Steve basically trained using the massive iron pillar that we talk about, sustainability and trying to live to fight another day, keeping yourself in the fight and not punishing yourself. This was a big issue or a big point of focus for Steve Reeves. Now, Steve obviously used full body training. His workouts lasted 90 to 120 minutes on average. He focused on no set to failure or not really training to failure. He believed it compromised form and potentially compromised recovery. I always believed you should finish your workout feeling refreshed, not exhausted. If you're crawling out of the gym, you've overdone it. So Steve tried to train hard, but not to the level where he felt so punished he was crawling out of the gym. Steve went on to say, excessive training breaks the body down faster than it can rebuild. Progress requires stimulation, not annihilation. Again, we have to be really careful to filter through these quotes and not draw out things that aren't there. Steve is not telling you to train like a wimp. He's not telling you to train weak. He's not telling you not to train hard, but he's not doing anything excessive, nothing that would be excessively punishing for him. We should also add that Steve focused on having a steady pace during his training. So he would try to keep things just moving along. He would try not to mess around. And his rest in between sets did vary a little bit, but it was tight without being restrictive. Always focused on getting the most he could out of training and keeping the workout moving along. Now, finally, here is an image of a classic Steve Reeves type of workout routine. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can see a wide variety of exercises, basically 8 to 9 exercises per day, or about 24 to 27 exercises per week. This could probably range anywhere from 80 to 100 training sets per week. So basically, in the massive iron world, that would equate to maybe up to about 5 training days per week if you use a non-full body approach. All right, guys, there you have it. A look at Steve Reeves' training and nutrition. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you learned anything interesting. Drop a comment down below. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day.